Masechet Zevaḥim Daf Chaf Bet Gufa Amar Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina Kol Kiyor she'en bo kedei lekadesh arba'a kohanim mimenu en mekadeshin bo shenemar verachasu mimenu Moshe ve'Aaron u'banav. We're going back to a statement that we saw earlier to analyze it further. Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rabbi Chanina, says that if a kiyor does not hold enough water in it to wash the hands and feet of 4 kohanim, then you cannot use it at all. It has to be big enough that it can have enough water for 4 people. How do you know that? Because in the instructions of the kiyor, it says, Rachasu mimenu, that they will wash from it. Moshe, that's 1 person. Aaron is 2 people. Banav is Aaron's 2 sons. That's 2 more. That's 4 people altogether. So there has to be enough water. Even if only 1 person is washing, there has to be enough water that at least 4 people can wash. Me'etiveh, kol ha'kelim mekadeshin, ben sheyesh bahen revi'it, ben she'en bahen revi'it, ulbad sheyehu kele sharet. But we have a baraita that seems to contradict it, because it says, any vessels can be used for washing hands and feet. You put some water in the vessel, pour it on the hands and feet, and then you're good to go. Whether it contains a revi'it, or whether it cannot hold a revi'it. As long as it's a holy vessel. It can't just be a regular bowl from home. It has to be a sanctified vessel. So that means even something very small, that's enough for 1 person. Doesn't have to be enough for 4 people. So how can we reconcile these 2 statements? Amar Ravada bar Acha bekodeach betocho. Ravada bar Acha explains that we're talking about where you drill a hole in the kiyor, and then you put this little vessel in the hole as a kind of spout. Therefore, since the water is coming from the kiyor, and the kiyor has enough water to be used for 4 people, and this water is now coming out and pouring through on top of this small vessel. So since the water came from a proper place, and now it's temporarily in the small vessel, and then you use it, that's okay. Hold on. The pasuk back here, remember, says Rachasu mimenu. You have to wash from it. So since the pasuk says from it, from the kiyor, doesn't that mean that has to be directly from the kiyor and not using another vessel as an intermediary? And so we answer, Yirchasu, lerabot keli sharet. The word Yirchasu is an extra word. You could have just written mimenu. Yirchasu, they can wash, that adds that you can use a secondary vessel. You take the water from the kiyor, it goes into a little vessel, and from that little vessel, then you pour it onto your hands and feet. That's okay from the word yirchatzu. Wait, once you say the word yirchatzu is an expansive word and comes to include something else, so then why not say it comes to include even a non-sacred vessel? Just a regular bowl that you have off the street, maybe you can use that too. Amar Abaye, kele hol lama sit amart mikal vachomer mikano ma kano shenimshach imo eno mekadesh kele hol she'eno nimshach imo eno din she'eno mekadesh. Abaye says no. I'm going to prove that a keli hol you cannot use a kal vachomer from the kan. That's the base. That's the base of the basin of the kiyor. The kiyor is on top and is sitting on, also made out of nechoshet. It's a hollow bowl-shaped thing, but it's not made to hold things in it, but rather it's just the foundation so that the sink part will be lifted up. And the kiyor will be lifted up, so it'll be at a nice height. Now, that kan, even though technically it's hollow inside, so you could fill it up with water, but the law is that you cannot use the base of the kiyor in order to wash hands and feet. Now, if the kan, which is sanctified along with it, it gets anointed when the Mishkan was built, also the base was anointed, and yet you cannot use it to wash hands and feet, then certainly a bowl that's chol, which was not anointed, all the more so, you cannot use it for hands and feet. Good, so that's how we know from Kal Vachomer that kele chol is out. Okay, but you're assuming that the base of the kiyor is no good. How do you know that? Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yachol Yehe Kano Mekadesh Kederech Shekiyor Mekadesh. Talmud Omar Vasita Kiyor Nechoshet Vechano Nechoshet. Nechoshet Hi Kashtiv Velo Ledabar Acher. Because Rabbi Yehuda says in a Braita, would it be possible to propose that just like that the base can mikadesh, just like the kiyor is used to wash the hands and feet. That's why the pasuk, when it compares them, is said, make a kiyor out of copper, and also make the base out of copper. By repeating that word copper, it's saying we're only comparing them in terms of the material that you use, that they're both copper, but not for anything else. In all other ways, they're not the same. Only the kiyor can be used for sanctification of hands and feet, and not the basis. אמר לאמור זוטרא ברד רב מרי לרבינה, מה לכנו שאין עשוי לתוכו, תאמר בכלי חול שעשוי לתוכו. But Mor Zutra, the son of Rav Mari, tells Ravina, at that kavachomer, it doesn't fit, doesn't stand, because you can't compare the base, which is not made for the use of its inside. It's not made to hold liquid. It happens to be hollow, it's true, because, otherwise it'd be too heavy. So yes, it happens to be hollow, but it's not made to contain water. And therefore, that's why you can't use it. You can't compare that to a klechol, a bowl that, even though, it's a bowl you bring from home, but it's made to hold water. And therefore, maybe it can be used. So this kal vachomer is not a good source. Ela mimenu lema'ote kedechol. Rather, we're going to use the word mimenu, a limiting word, to say it has to be from the basin itself, from the kiyor, and not from a klechol. Yachei kele sharet nameh. If so, if you're saying mimenu is directly from the kiyor and it's excluding klechol, then you should exclude Kle sharet also and say no intermediary bowl can be used at all. But we have the other word yirchasu, which is an extra word that is an inclusive word that comes to add kle sharet. Umara'ita. Now we wonder, you have an exclusive word and an inclusive word. Why do you decide that you're going to exclude kle hol and include kle sharet? Maybe they should be the other way around. And the answer is Ze ta'un meshicha kamohu, veze en ta'un meshicha kamohu. Because the kle sharet has to be sanctified, just like the kiyor has to be sanctified, to make it a kle sharet. So therefore it makes a lot more sense to say that these will have a similar law, that just like the kiyor itself is sanctified, so now you can take also a smaller kle sharet and use it in conjunction. You drill a hole and it pours out, and then it goes in the little cup, and then you can use that. That makes a lot more sense, and that you cannot use a kle hol, which does not need to be sanctified like the basin, and therefore cannot be used at all. Amar Resh Lakish, Kol ha-mashlim leme mikveh, mashlim leme chiyor. L'rbi'it eno mashlim. Resh Lakish rules that any liquids that can be used to complete the 40 se'ah that's needed for a mikveh. We're going to see what liquids this is talking about. It's going to be like, for example, fruit juice that you cannot use for a mikveh for the initial 40 se'ah, but we'll see how it can help to complete it. You can use those liquids also for the kiyor. However, those liquids cannot be used for washing hands. When you wash hands, netilat yadayim, you need a revi'it. And those liquids cannot be used to make up the minimum of a revi'it that you need for regular washing hands, netilat yadayim, even though those liquids can be used for a mikveh and to be used in the kiyor. Lemeut mai, what type of liquids is this excluding that can be used for a mikveh and kiyor, but not for revi'it of netilat yadayim? Ilema lemeut tit hanadok. Maybe it's talking about liquefied mud, clay that's very liquidy. Hechi dameh. Ide para shocha v'shota mimenu afilu l'bit name. V'en para shocha v'shota mimenu afilu mikveh name en mashlim. Well, let's see. How liquidy is it? Is it just like dirty water? Well, let's see. If a cow would kneel down and drink from it, then that's just considered water. It doesn't have to be the cleanest water in the world to be kosher. So as long as a cow would drink from it, even though it's pretty dirty water and almost muddy, still that would be just cold water, and you can use it for everything, even for the revi'it. And if a cow would not bend down and drink from it, then you can't use it for anything, not for a revi'it, and not for a mikveh either. So that's just one or all the other. So that there wouldn't be no difference in the law between a mikveh and a revi'it if it's mud water. Ela leme'ute yabchoshin adumin afilu be'anayhu nameh teha tanya Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer kol shetechilat b'riato min hamayim matbilim bo ve'amar Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi matbilin be'ayno shel dag. Rather, maybe it's excluding red gnats. Now, these are not actually a liquid, but they do grow in water. Some kind of bug that grows in water. And in that case, because it grows in water, it's considered part of the water. And so if you'll say you have 40 se'ah of water, and part of the water is these red gnats, makes up some of the volume of it, well, that's kosher, but it can't be that because in that case, even it was just gnats by themselves without any water. Still, that would be a kosher mikveh. One could go and dip in. You wouldn't want to. It would be kind of disgusting, but technically one could because a Braita teaches that according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, anything that originates in the water, that's born and grows in the water, that's considered like the water itself and you can immerse in it. Not only gnats that grow in the water, Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi says a very strange case of, let's say you have a giant eye of a fish, of some giant whale, and the eye itself contains 40 se'ah of juice, eye juice in there, and you make a hole in the eye, and then one can dunk inside the eyeball of this giant fish. That would be okay, even though it's not water, but it's something that grows in the water, and therefore even that would be fine. Therefore, you cannot say about these red gnats or eye juice that it completes the measure for a mikveh because they can be the entire measurement of a mikveh. We're looking for something that if you have water and then you have some of this other liquid, you can include some of that other liquid in a certain case. So it has to be something that cannot actually be used entirely for a mikveh. And these items, since they grow in the water, they can be entirely used, so they have just the same law as water itself. Rather, must be talking about something else. Amar Papa, the Mute Natan Se'ah v'Natal Se'ah. Papa says it's talking about a case where you have 40 se'ah exactly. Here the Mishnah will explain the case in Masechet Mikvaot, where you're adding a se'ah and then taking away a se'ah. What's the case? Ditnan, mikveh sheyesh bo 40 se'ah mechuvanot, natan se'ah v'natal se'ah. Hare ze kasher. V'amar Rav Yehuda bar Shila, amar Rav Aseh, amar Rabbi Yochanan, ad rubo. Let's say you have a mikveh, it's with exactly 40 se'ah of water. Nice, good, pure rainwater, okay, but it's exact. Now, you add another se'ah of something like fruit juice. Fruit juice, you cannot use a whole 40 se'ah of fruit juice for a mikveh. Not good. But once you have a kosher mikveh out of water, and you add 1 se'ah of fruit juice, and then you take out a se'ah, and even though you're not taking out the exact se'ah of juice that you put in, you're taking out from the other side, and you're taking out water, it's kosher. So that's what we mean by this is a liquid that, although it cannot be used by itself for a mikveh, it can complete. Once you have a kosher mikveh, and then you have some fruit juice in it, even though the rest goes down, it can be counted for the completion of the 40 se'ah. Rav Yehuda bar Shela says in the name of Rav Aseh, name of Rabbi Yochanan, that you can do that, but not for the whole thing, only up to the majority. So that if you added, you kept doing that, or once you'd add 20 se'ah of juice, and then you take out 20 se'ah, that's okay. But if you add 21 se'ah of juice, and then take out 21 se'ah from that mixture of that's all together, then that would be no good, because then in the end you have a majority of juice and not water. So that's what we're talking about here when we say this is a liquid that can be used to complete 40 se'ah, and it can also be used for me kiyor, but that liquid, meaning a fruit juice, cannot be used to complete a revi'it of water that you need for washing hands. For washing hands, it has to be one revi'it of water itself, and you can't add fruit juice and take away some of the water. Amar Rav Papa. Once we have Rav Papa already said one law, here's another law that's related. Amar Rav Papa, im kadach bo revi'it matbilin bo mechatin v'sinoriot to'il umehechshera de mikveh atya. Rav Papa says, if you have a mikveh and you drill a hole into the side, and then you have a little pocket, so a little of the water pours out of that hole, and then you have a small amount of mikveh water, and it's big enough that you can immerse needles and hooks that became tameh, and you want to kosher them, and you dip it in there, that's okay. Because since it came from a kosher mikveh, so now, even if it's disconnected, but it poured right out from it, and therefore it's big enough that you can immerse the entire needle in it, that is okay. That's related to the halacha we saw before, that as long as you have a kiyor that has enough water for 4 people to wash their hands, and then you pour some of the water out into a smaller vessel, also that's okay. Similar law, since it came from a place that is a kosher mikveh or a kosher kiyor, even though it went into a smaller basin, it still is kosher to use. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar Resh Lakish me mikveh kesherim leme chiyor. Resh Lakish rules that water from a mikveh can be used to fill up the kiyor, meaning that when you want to fill up the kiyor, you can dunk the kiyor into the mikveh and use it to draw water from a mikveh. Mikveh means here collected water that is collected from rainwater into a mikveh. This is as opposed to mayim hayim, which is from naturally flowing spring water. You don't need naturally flowing spring water, but rather water from a regular mikveh is okay. Now, is that to tell us that you don't need mayim hayim for the kiyor? V'atanya b'mayim v'lo b'yayin, b'mayim v'lo b'mazuk, b'mayim l'rabot shar mayim, v'kal v'chomer l'mechiyor. My love kal v'chomer l'mechiyor. Lav demayim hayim ninhu. We can learn from this baraita, it seems to indicate that you do need mayim chayim for the kiyor, because this baraita is talking about the water that is used to wash the innards of a korban olah. You have to wash the innards ba mayim. And the baraita learns, ba mayim means only with water and not wine, with water and not with wine mixed with water. And ba mayim also teaches that it includes other waters, meaning any water. You could just take any water. It doesn't have to be special water from a mikveh or anything. And then it says, kal v'chomer, that you can use water from the kiyor. In other words, if you can use regular water, certainly you can use me kiyor. Now, what does that mean? Certainly you can use me kiyor. Doesn't that mean kal v'chomer? What's that kal v'chomer? Doesn't that mean that the water of the kiyor is flowing water? And therefore, for sure, if you can use regular water, for sure use me kiyor, because me kiyor has a higher status, meaning that it's used with, that you fill it with mayim hayim. So doesn't that mean it has to be mayim hayim? And the answer is no. La de kadesh. No, the kal v'chomer is because the kiyor water can be used for sanctifying the hands and the feet, and that's what makes it more special. But not because it comes from mayim hayim. V'kadisheh me'aliyutahi v'atana Rabbi Shemuel mayim she'en lahem levai yasu mechiyor sheyesh lahem shem levai. Hold on. Just the fact that you can use the mechiyor for kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, is that actually a benefit for this purpose of washing the innards of the olah? The baraita from Rabbi Shemuel says that you can only use water that has no other name as a modifier, something that you just call mayim. But if it's something that is water of, like me kiyor, water of the kiyor, which has a modifier, then you can actually you cannot use it to wash the innards. So it can't be talking about that you're actually using the water in the kiyor in order to wash the innards of the olah. Rather, what it means is that you can use water that would be fitting for the mekior. If there's water that's fitting for the mekior, then you can use that also to wash the innards. Not if it's actually in the kiyor, because then it's already called mekiyor. So what does it mean, water that's fitting in the kiyor and has a kal vachomer? So this is water that has some extra special status. Doesn't that mean it's mayim hayim? And from here, then we can learn that the kiyor has to be filled with mayim hayim. So we have a challenge against Resh Lakish again. And the answer is Tana'ehi. It's actually a machloket between two Tana'im. Tamar Rabbi Yochanan, mechiyor, Rabbi Yishmael omer, mema'ayan hen. V'chachamim omrim, shar memot hen. Rabbi Yochanan says that regarding the water of the kiyor, Rabbi Yishmael says it has to come from a spring water. And Chamim say, no, it can be any other type of water. We now move on to the next item in the list in the Mishnah of those who cannot perform sacrificial services, and if they do, then the korban is pasul. Arel, someone who is not circumcised. Minalan, what's the source? Amar Rav Chisda, Davar ze mitrat Moshe Rabbeinu lo lamadu midibrei Yechezkel ben Buzi lamanu. Kol ben nechad eirel lev ve'eirel basar lo yavo el mikdashi leshareteni. Rav Chisda says you're not going to find this in the Chumash in Torat Moshe, but you will find it in Yechezkel, where it says any ben nechad, which seems to mean someone who's not Jewish, eirel lev, someone who's not pure of heart, he's uncircumcised of heart. We'll see what that was referring to. Eirel basar, that's the one that we need. He is uncircumcised in his flesh, cannot come to my mikdash to serve me. From that pasuk, we only see that there's a prohibition for someone who's not circumcised to serve. But how do you know that if he does come and serve, also the korban will be pasul? Tichtiv v'havi'achem et bnei nechad arle leb ve'arle basar liot b'mikdashi lechaled et beti. Because a pasuk, two pasukim before the one that we just read, it says in that you have brought strangers, uncircumcised in heart, uncircumcised in flesh, to be in my sanctuary, to profane my house. So you see that if they do something, they cause it to be profaned. Tenor banan. Ben nechad yachol ben nechad mamash. Okay, now that we dealt with someone who physically is uncircumcised, let's deal with the other items in the list. Ben nechad, that seems to mean someone who's not Jewish. Could that mean literally not Jewish? I mean, they have to be a kohen. So if they're not Jewish, then they're certainly not going to be a kohen. Talmud lomad eirel leb. So therefore it says eirel leb to say that this is an explanation of ben nechad, that someone who is not fitting proper in a moral sense. Imken, ma talmud lomad ben nechad. So if ben nechad is not coming to exclude literally a non-Jew who would be excluded anyway, so what is it excluding? Shenit nakeru ma'asav la'aviv shebashamayim, that his ways are strange. Nechad literally means strange. If it's talking about a non-Jew or a foreigner, someone not from the land of Israel, it would be a foreigner, nechad. But here it means someone whose actions are estranged from his Father in heaven. So about a Jew, even a Kohen, who does not act properly according to Torah and Mitzvot, cannot serve. Now that is someone who is morally problematic, and that would be the same as someone who is uncircumcised of heart. How do you know about someone who is uncircumcised literally? That's from Erel Basar Usrichi. And we need the pasuk to say both of these things. Because the pasuk only said someone who is physically uncircumcised, I would say that's disgusting, because this is a physical blemish that he has, this orla that has to be cut off. But someone who is morally an uncircumcised, where it's not a physical disgusting thing, I might say maybe that's okay. And if the pasuk only said someone uncircumcised of heart cannot serve, maybe that's because his heart is not towards heaven. He's not a faithful person. But someone who is physically uncircumcised, where his heart is okay, his heart's in the right place, even though he has this physical problem that he doesn't have a brit milah, I might think that's okay. So therefore I need both, which is really an interesting contrast. It's saying, you might think, what's more important, the inner spirit, even if the outer physical is a problem, you might think that that's okay. No, you need the outer outer symbol also to be. You might think the outer symbol is enough. That's the main thing, and not what you are thinking about inside. No, what your kavanah also is important. And so we need both of these to say both the outer symbol and the inner spirit are both essential for preparing a korban properly. Tameh pasul, the next item in the Mishnah, is a kohen who is tameh, is going to be unfit, and if he serves and performs a sacrifice, it will be pasul. Now, this tameh cannot refer to all cases, because if everybody is tameh and a communal sacrifice, then a kohen can perform it. We learned this law from Pesach Sheni. The pasuk regarding Pesach Sheni says, if an individual is tameh lamet, so specifically an individual, and only for tumat met, then they do not do Pesach Rishon, they are pushed off and they do Pesach Sheni. We learn from that if the majority of the community is tameh lamet, then that overrides, and Pesach, they do Korban Pesach on Pesach Rishon. So we learn from here, not only Korban Pesach, but also any communal offering. If the majority of the community is tameh lamet, then they can still perform the korban. And what's true for the people is also true for the kohanim. Also, if the kohanim are tameh lamet, they can still perform korban pesach and communal sacrifices if it's the majority of the community that is tameh. So now, knowing that, we have to qualify. Not every tum'ah, not in every case. Amru ziknei darom lo shanu ela tameh sheretz. The elders of the south in Israel said that when the Mishnah says that an impure kohen that cannot serve and his korban will be tameh, that's only if they're tameh from a sheretz, someone who touched one of the 8 creepy crawlies when they're dead. He becomes tameh only for that day. He goes to the mikveh during the day, and then he is tahor at night. So that's the case where if he touched a dead sheretz, and then he went and performed the korban, then it will be pasul. But if he is tameh lamet, since he can perform a communal offering, he also can, if he performs a individual offering, it will be b'di'avad. Okay, he's tameh lamet, so really he should not offer an individual offering, but b'di'avad, if he does, it's not pasul, so that's not included in tameh pasul, that's in the Mishnah. We ask, Ihachet, tameh sheretz name lete b'kal v'chomri mitameh met. Ma tameh met sheta'on haza'ah shel ishush b'ri meraseh. Tameh sheretz she'eno ta'on haza'ah shel ishush b'ri eno din shemeraseh. If so, that a kohen who's tameh lamet can perform a korban, then shouldn't it be all the more so that if he's tameh sheretz, it should also be okay. We have to, after all, to kal v'chomer. If tameh met, where someone who's tameh lamet has a whole process, he has to get sprinkled with parah adumah on the 3rd and 7th day, and only then is he okay. So tameh, someone who became tameh from touching a sheretz, who does not need to be sprinkled on the 3rd and 7th day with parah adumah waters, he just needs to go to the mikveh and then wait till nighttime. All the more so, if a kohen does it when he's tameh sheretz, it should be an acceptable korban. That makes sense, that kal v'chomer. And the answer is, kasabri ziknei darom, mechaperin ke mitkaperin. Ma mitkaperin, tameh met in, tameh sheretz la, af mechaperin, tameh met in, tameh sheretz la. So here's the reciprocal rule, that we compare those who are doing atonement, that's the kohanim, to the people receiving atonement, that's the individuals or the people who are bringing the korban. So just like the people bringing the korban, if they are tameh met, meaning if the majority of the community is tameh lamet, then a communal offering can be given on their behalf. So too, and yet, if it's a whole community, if they are tameh lasher, it's not. So that's the basic law that we know. We know this from Pesach Sheni. since Pesach Sheni specifically talked about someone Tameh Lamet and an individual, so the individual is pushed off, that means that Tameh Lamet of a community is not pushed off. So therefore, again, just like those who receive atonement, that's the community, if they are Tameh Met, then they can still make the Korban Pesach, or any communal offering, they can still make it. But if the majority of the community is Tameh Sheretz, then it doesn't push anything off. The reason for that is because Korban Pesach can be given as even if someone's Tameh Sheretz as an individual, because he can send someone, here, you do it, and then he can go to the mikveh during the day and he can do it at night. So there's no need to have a Korban Pesach pushed off even for an individual. We're going to talk about that soon. Af mechaperin, so too the Kohanim, the Kohanim can only perform a Korban when they're Tameh Met, and it will still be a kosher korban. But if the kohen is tameh lasheretz, then it's pasul totally. So this undoes the kal vachomer, because we're comparing the kohen to the community, and in the community we don't make a kal vachomer. That's the law of the community. That even though tameh met, tumat met is more stringent, but the community could offer a korban sibur only if they are majority tameh met, but not if they're tameh sheretz. So we apply the same thing to the kohanim. My kasebre, I kasebre en shochatin v'zorkin al tameh sheretz, amai la'avdeh sibur betumah. Ha kol shebiyachid nidche sibur avdeh betumah. We ask a question about the sages from the south. What do they think? Do they think that an individual cannot do shechita and have the blood sprinkled for Korban Pesach if he is tameh for sheretz? Do they think that he can't do that? Well, if so, if an individual can't do that, and then you have a majority of the people are tameh, tumat sheretz, and the majority then cannot bring their Korban Pesach, then why would you say that when the majority is tameh sheretz, they cannot do it bitumah? Because it should be the same as tumat met. If the majority of the people are tumat met and they can't bring korban pesach, then it overrides and they bring korban pesach bitumah. So too, if you think that each individual cannot bring a korban pesach when he is tameh sheretz, then also if the majority is tameh sheretz, they should be able to bring it on regular pesach. Because we have a rule. Anything that is pushed off for an individual, if the majority has that tumah, they can do it, and you don't push them off. So then, in such a case, that would mean that a community who is tameh lasheretz should be able to have communal offerings. But the elders of the south did not say that. They said only for tumat met, not for tumat sheretz. Ela kasabre shochatin v'zorkin al tameh sheretz. Rather, it must be that they think that an individual who is tameh sheretz on Erev Pesach can still send the korban. He buys the korban and he sends it, and then someone will do shechita. The kohanim will do zirika, even though he is tameh sheretz, and that's okay because he'll go to the mikveh during the day, and then by nighttime when he has to eat it, he will be tahor. So it must be that they think that, and that's consistent with what they said before. So yes, an individual who's tameh sheretz can bring a korban pesach. And therefore, there's no need to have even if the whole community is tameh lasheretz, there's no need to push them off till Pesach Sheni. There's no need to override anything. They can all bring it as an individual and become tahor during the night. So that's totally fine for korban for tumat sheretz, and that's consistent with what they said above in their basic law, that just like one can bring to someone who's tameh lamet brings a korban pesach, so too they could do so for any communal korban if the majority of the people are tameh, and so too we compare the people to the kohen, and therefore if a kohen himself is tameh lamet, b'diavad, even if he makes a korban yachid, still it will not be pasul. Rather, the kohen will only make something pasul if he is tameh by tumat sheretz. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.